when they, the people we want to bring in, people we want to attract, make part of us, when they look at us, can they find themselves? And when the answer is you bet they can, you are part of the future.
To say that it's an honor to be here would be a massive understatement. So thank you very much on the day before Thanksgiving for giving us some time. I'm curious as we get going, an estimate. How many interviews on leadership have you done during your career? Perfect answer.
I have no idea how many interviews on leadership. Everyone has been exciting, and I've been honored to do them, and I've tried to be as forthright as I can be.
It is a pleasure to be here, and I have been impressed with what I have heard you say about your grandmother and her role in any kind of leadership credit that you've received. What could you tell us about this wonderful person, your grandmother?
Well, my grandmother had 7 children, and she and my grandfather, who was Justice of the Peace from the time he was 38 until he was 93 and running for his last 3-year term. And in their house, they thought it was only normal to build a small church-sized pipe organ, and my grandfather played the pipe organ in the Methodist church. And in the pipe organ in their home, they had a shelf above the keyboard, of course, and on that shelf were 2 of the most beautiful, tall, ancient Chinese vases. Now I'm 7 or 8 years old, and every Saturday I go to see Mama Wicks. I'm wild about my grandmother. So every week I go, I say, may I please play with the vases? No, no one, Francis, ever touches. So finally one Saturday I'm feeling very assertive and I say, I want to play with those vases. And I actually stamp my foot at my wonderful grandmother and say, I want those vases, in my worst tone. Instead of telling me what a bad girl I was, she led me over to a little Victorian love seat facing the pipe organ, dark red velvet upholstery. We sit down, she puts her arm around my shoulders. We are looking at the vases, and she says, let me tell you about the vases. Long, long ago, when your mother was 8 years old, in this little town, and it was a very small town, there was a Chinese laundroman, and every Tuesday he picked up your grandfather's shirts, brought them back Thursday, beautifully washed, starched, ironed. He wore his hair in a queue, a cap, and a long Chinese robe. And the bad boys would chase him as he made his deliveries and call him Chinky Chinky Chinaman and worse. One day there was a knock on my kitchen door, she said. I opened it, and there was Mr. Yi with a huge bundle wrapped in newspaper. And she said, oh, good morning, Mr. Yi. Won't you come in? Please sit down. Mr. Yi handed her this giant package. She opened it, and in it were 2 exquisite ancient Chinese vases. And she says, "Oh, Mr. Yee, are far too valuable. I could not accept them. I want you to have them." She looked at him and said, "Mr. Yee, why do you want me to have your vases?" He looked at her with tears came down his cheek, and he said, "Mrs. Wicks, I've been in this town for 10 years. They won't let me bring my wife and children, so I am going back to China to be with them, and the vases were all I brought with me. I want you to have them." She looked at Mr. Yee and said, "But Mr. Yee, why do you want me to have your vases?" He looked at her with tears and said, "Mrs. Wicks, I have been in this town for 10 years, and you are the only person who ever called me Mr. Yee." You can imagine the bad words, the bad boys. So when my grandmother told me that story, I cried my heart out. She held me and cried my heart out for poor Mr. Yee. And when she died, she left a little card. I wanted Francis to have Mr. Yee's vases. Now today they are in my living room. Every time I look at them, I remember Mr. Yee and respect for all people. Now, would I ever forget that lesson?
I don't think anyone will or should.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. That was an amazing story and amazingly well told.
Thank you.
You were at the forefront, whether you wanted to be or not, of inclusion, diversity, those kinds of things. I remember reading in Colin Powell's book that at the time he joined the Army was one of the few organizations anywhere where he was going to be promoted on the basis of his willingness and ability. How far have we come with inclusion and diversity and and how far do we have to go?
We have made some progress, but not enough. We have a wonderful battle cry from a long time ago when the people we want to bring in, people we want to attract, make part of us, when they look at us, can they find themselves? If you look at our boards, look at the national staff, look at the community leaders. When the people we really have to bring in, we are determined to bring them in. When they look at us, can they find themselves? And if you say, "Well, not yet, but we're going to," you already are part of the past. When I walk in, with Girl Scouts, I walked in a board meeting with 6 of my national staff team. Do they all look like me? Of course not. When you look at the officers, the national volunteers, do they all look like me? No. When I went on to the Girl Scouts as the new National Executive Director, the CEO, our chairman of the board was African American. And so we just thought it was very important when they look at us, doesn't matter who, you decide can they find themselves? And when the answer is you bet they can, you are part of the future.
Very well said. And you mentioned too, like in the global context, I was certainly unaware before today, you visit 62 countries, did you say? 60?
So far, I've traveled to 62 countries. 3 years ago, I had a not so happy, really dangerous experience in an airport, not the plane, in the airport. And it was providential because suddenly I realized it's something called the global webinar. I sit there with that screen and 400 women in 40 countries or more. Recently, the MBA students in Hong Kong and China. One thing we never do is charge a fee. We want the poorest countries, the poorest leaders to have whatever we have.
What a tremendous vehicle for you to get your message, as you say, to people around the world.
Yes.
You know, it just in time, you know, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we put everything on the website, so all these marvelous people, we've never paid an honorarium ever.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they love what we're doing.
Honestly, I know for a fact that they're influential people, they're powerful people, and they also wouldn't be doing something for you if you weren't living your values
Yes.
and making that kind of personal commitment.
Well, in 1976, that's a long time ago, I was the first woman in the USA. We didn't know that back in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, but they invited me to chair the United Way campaign. They didn't know that no woman had ever chaired it. And 2 bankers came to see me and asked me if I would chair it. I'd raised a lot of money for the Girl Scouts, and they thought we could have fun. So they said, and you can choose your vice chairman, and next year he will chair it. I said, I would like Ernie Wadsworth, president of the United Steelworkers, as my vice chairman. They looked at me, they said, what? And I would like the national president of AFL-CIO to do the kickoff. They said, we've never involved them. We will have to ask Bethlehem Steel. I said, fine. They came back wide-eyed. They said, Bethlehem Steel says their car will pick them up, the union people at the airport, bring them to the steel mill dining room for a kickoff luncheon. And the banker said, well, we will then have a dinner that night as a kickoff. For the first time, you had organized labor and the big corporations, just like this. And that year, Little Johnstown, PA had the highest per capita giving of any United Way in the USA. And a couple weeks ago, the New York Times had a little tiny article about a woman who had just become the chairman of the United Way campaign in New York City. And it mentioned that I was the first woman ever. And in 100 years, there have been 2 women. 100 years of United Way campaigns, there have been only 2 women ever to chair. All the others have been gentlemen. And so it was fun to find that out and then learn I was the first woman in that 100-year period, and This one is the second.
Well, it sounds like you knew exactly what you were doing with the labor and the management and putting
Yes,
the
yes, it was such fun. And when
a little
the girl,
manipulative there, maybe. I don't know.
no, just engage everyone.
Yeah.
So,
With your Army ties and your passion for inclusion and with that, protest, I'm interested how you view the protests that take place in the NFL during the national anthem. It seems like that's about as controversial an issue as, you're over here, you're over here, it's tough to be in the middle. But from your perspective, what do you see there? What do we learn from it? How do we make that a positive thing?
we all come together. And we are very positive about sustaining the democracy. It doesn't take care of itself. And so we find ways to bring all of us together. And whether you stand up or sit down or lie down, someone like General Lloyd Austin, some of our great thought leaders who are out there, have to be able to say to them, we appreciate the way you feel. Now, we're all together. Our job is to keep this democracy going. So, the people who want to stand up or sit down, quietly we talk to dissenters. But in the end, if this is the only way you can be a citizen of this country, then even though we would ask you not to, we will respect you. I think respect for all people has to be the most powerful message.
Yeah. And you're obviously back to mission there.
Yes,
If the mission is to keep the democracy together,
that's
you have
right.
to acknowledge and respect the dissenting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why did I know I was going to hear something that made sense from you on that when everyone else just seems to be, screaming from one side of the
Well,
issue or the other?
we had the right grandmother.
From your perspective, as you reflect on history and you reflect on challenges, problems, issues that our society and business has gone through, how bad off are we? Do we have the capacity or the ability, from a leadership perspective, to really tackle some of these issues?
Recently, a good friend of mine saw me and said, Frances, what have you been drinking? I said, well, all the Diet Coke, caffeine-free that I can find. He said, no, I mean alcohol. What have you been drinking? And I said, well, my first answer is a good one. He said, all this talk about bright future when everything is going to H. I said, I am very positive about a bright future, and I'll tell you why. You go to Pew Study Center and look at their latest scientific study of our 15, 17 to 23-year-olds that we now call the millennials. What their scientific study shows is our, quote, millennials today are more like 1930s and 40s than any cohort since 1940, and we call them the greatest generation. So why would I not be very, very positive about the future and the young people? I speak to young people in all kinds of groups frequently. And I love it when I always say to them, now you have very good memories, don't you? And they all yell, yes. I said, all right. Now remember 320 Park Avenue. And they all bellow back, 320 Park Avenue. I said, that's our offices. You have my card. You thought it was a business card. No, it is an invitation to breakfast, lunch, or dinner whenever you are in New York. And so I look forward to continuing. And when young people walk in that door, the other day, 3 young men walked in, and it was morning. They said, we're from Croatia. We're part of your University of Pittsburgh Hesselbein Leadership Forum. And we took the first flight out this morning at 5:30 so we could spend the day. Remember you said, do come? We're ready to spend the day. Well, we threw out everything we had planned and we had them. There's something about right now, whether here or abroad, something about the millennials. It is so inspiring.
Gives you
And
reason
the way
for...
they're volunteering all over the world, it's just so beautiful, so incredible.
Yeah.
So bright future is my battle cry.
I feel better already somehow. I know millennials. That's
Yes,
no.
you should.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You should.
I'm surrounded by them. No, all 4 of us are going to go do something good because we've been in the
5
room
of
with
us.
you.
I hope we don't say goodbye. I hope we stay together.
Well, we will. Again, on behalf of everybody at the Center for Leadership Studies and Marshall Goldsmith, our good friend, it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much